Hi, this is Emily with DAZ 3D. In this video, I'm going to show you how to recreate the Barefoot Dancer scene included with the Genesis 2 Starter Essentials. This video should serve as a quick introduction to DAZ Studio, how to load content, build a scene, and render it. Before we get started, you'll need a few things. Here I have the DAZ Install Manager open. You can see I have DAZ Studio installed. This tutorial requires version 4.6 or higher. I also have the Genesis 2 Starter Essentials and the default lights and shaders for DAZ Studio installed. We will use all three of these products to build our scene. I've gone ahead and launched DAZ Studio, and I'm using the Hollywood Boulevard interface layout, which is the default layout for DAZ Studio. If you'd like to follow along, I suggest you change your layout to match. You can do this by clicking on the Window menu, opening the Workspace submenu, and choosing the Select Layout action. If you click the drop-down menu in the top right corner of the dialog, it will display all of the interface layouts available. Select Hollywood Boulevard and click Accept. Near the top of the DAZ Studio interface, you can see that there are several activity tabs. These activity tabs will allow you to switch between various activities in DAZ Studio. You have Actors, Wardrobe and Props, Pose and Animate, Lights and Cameras, and Render. As you move between activities, the panes and tools available to you change to suit the activity. We will use each of these activities as we progress through this tutorial, starting with the Actors, Wardrobe, and Props activity. If you're not in this activity, go ahead and click on the Actors, Wardrobe, and Props tab to switch activities. Let's start off by loading an actor into the scene. For this tutorial, we will use the Barefoot Dancer character, which is based off of the Genesis 2 female figure. In DAZ Studio, you can load content from the Smart Content pane. The pane is located on the left-hand side of the interface. If you don't see the Smart Content pane, make sure you are in the Actors, Wardrobe, and Props activity. Once you're in that activity, you can click on the tab attached to the Smart Content pane to bring it to the front. Now that the Smart Content pane is open, we can load our actor into the scene. The Barefoot Dancer is located under Figures. You can see here that I'm clicking the little arrow to expand the category, People, Female. In this category, you can see all of the female actors that are available to us. The one that we want to load is called Figure Barefoot Dancer. To load her into the scene, all you need to do is double-click the icon. You can see she's been loaded into the scene. Note the white lines around her. This is called a bounding box, and it indicates that she is selected in the scene. Scene selection is very important in DAZ Studio, as you will see when we load clothing and hair, which we'll do next. Make sure that the Barefoot Dancer is selected, and then go back into the Smart Content pane. Since she is selected, the Smart Content pane will show us clothing and hair that is compatible with the Barefoot Dancer. To find clothing, look under the Wardrobe category. The clothing we want to load can be found under the Full Body subcategory. The name of the icon is Clothing Barefoot Dancer. You can double-click the icon to load it into the scene, or you can drag and drop the clothing onto the Barefoot Dancer figure, which is what I'm doing right now. And there you see, the clothing has loaded right on to the Barefoot Dancer. It's that simple. We can do the same thing with hair. Let's open the hair category and look under Short. You can see there are a few hair options for the Barefoot Dancer. Let's load the hair to loose hair. You can either double-click to load the hair or load it by dragging and dropping it onto the Barefoot Dancer's head. As you can see, it's easy to load clothing and hair from the Smart Content pane. Now that our figure is dressed, we're ready to load an environment. Remember, the Smart Content pane filters content based on your current scene selection. If you have the Barefoot Dancer selected, the Smart Content pane will show you clothing, hair, and other items that work specifically with the Barefoot Dancer figure. The same is true for any other object that you have selected. However, we want to load an environment that is a standalone object. Right now, the head of the Barefoot Dancer is selected, which means that the environment we want to load is being filtered out due to the selection. What we need to do is deselect the Barefoot Dancer. We do this by clicking an empty area of the viewport. As I deselect the figure, you can see that the Smart Content pane is no longer filtering the content, and more content options have become available. I now have access to all content that can create something in the scene. If we go to the Ready to Render category and look under Architecture, you can see the environment for the Barefoot Dancer scene. As with any content, we can double-click the icon to load it, or we can drag it into the scene. I'd like to take a quick moment to point out a cool feature in DAZ Studio 4.6. This works with all content, not just environments. If you hold down the Alt key on a PC or the Option key on a Mac, then drag the icon, you will see a little target indicating where the item will load. I'll just drop it back there, and you can see that the environment loads where the target was. For this scene, we need the environment to load in its default location. So I'm going to delete the environment and reload it by double-clicking the icon. I recommend that you load the environment by double-clicking as well, so that it loads in the proper place. You can see that the environment loads right into the scene and is also listed on the right in the scene pane. In fact, you can see everything we have loaded so far listed in the scene pane. Now that all of the content we need is loaded into the scene, we are ready to modify it to make our scene unique. We'll start by shaping the hair. We can do this by loading a shaping preset. First, we need to select the hair. In the viewport, right-click on the hair and choose Select to Loose HR. Now that the hair is selected, we can modify it. Let's open the Shaping pane and bring the Presets page forward. Look under the Apply category and you will see the shaping presets for the hair. The name of the preset is Hair Shape to Loose Hair. This particular preset gives the hair a bit of volume and makes the hair look like it's in motion. All you need to do is double-click the preset to load it. You can see almost immediately that the shaping preset has applied to the hair. Now that we've shaped the hair, we're ready to pose our figure. First, we need to switch from the Actors, Wardrobe, and Props activity to the Pose and Animate activity. To do this, simply click the Pose and Animate tab in the activity bar. Now you can see on the left-hand side, we have the Posing pane available. Since we're going to pose the Barefoot Dancer, we need to make sure that she is selected. This can be done by double-clicking on the figure in the viewport. You can see, as I do this, the bounding box changes to indicate that I have selected the Barefoot Dancer. You could also right-click on the figure and choose Select Genesis to Female. Both methods produce the same result. Now that our figure is selected, we are ready to pose the Barefoot Dancer. Let's start by going into the Posing pane, which is already open on our left. We will be using the Presets page to load a pose preset for the Barefoot Dancer. Click the Presets label at the top of the pane to bring the Presets page forward. Let's look under the Poses category and choose the By Function subcategory. In this category, we can see all of the poses available for the Barefoot Dancer. Scroll down in the pane until you see the pose preset you want to apply. For this scene, we will use Pose Genesis 2 Female Barefoot Dancer. Double-click the preset to load it, and you will see the figure snap to the pose defined by the preset. Our next step is to light the scene. This is done in the Lights and Cameras activity. Just click the Lights and Cameras tab to switch to that activity. Once you've switched, you will see both the lights pane and the camera's pane on the left side of the interface. Open the lights pane and, once again, click the presets label to open the presets page. Expand the lights category, look under the Other subcategory, and you will find the lights preset for the Barefoot Dancer scene. The name of the preset is Lights Barefoot Dancer. Double-click the icon to load the preset. As the preset loads, you will see that the lighting in the scene changes. Now that our scene is lit, the next step is to load a camera. Loading a camera allows us to frame our shot. We'll do that with a camera preset. Bring the camera's pane to the front by clicking the tab, and then switch to the presets page by clicking the preset label at the top of the pane. Select the Barefoot Dancer category. You will see that there are 2 camera presets available for this scene. I'm going to load both presets so that you can see how they both look. Camera 2 is a wide-angle shot that is further away from the figure, while Camera 1 is a close-up of the barefoot dancer. You can choose to load either camera preset. I'm going to stick with Camera 1. All you need to do to load the preset is double-click it. When you load the camera preset, it does 2 things. First, it loads the camera into the scene. You can see that the camera is listed here in the scene pane. Second, it changes our view. You can see that Camera 1 is now the current view. We can change that with the View Selection menu. You can switch back to the perspective view if you'd like, but for now, let's stay with the Camera 1 view. We are almost ready to render our scene. We just need to add some final touches. One of the things we need for our scene is a backdrop image. A backdrop image will fill in any empty space left in the scene, so we don't get the blue background in our final image. To load a backdrop, click the Edit menu and choose the Backdrop action. This will open the Backdrop Options dialog, which allows us to load a backdrop. To load an image, click the button next to the image label and then choose Browse from the menu. Now we'll browse to where we installed our content. If you used the DAZ Install Manager, then your content will be in your My DAZ 3D library. The backdrop image that we want can be found under Runtime, Textures, DAZ, Backdrops. For this scene, we'll use the Dusk Sky backdrop. Simply double-click the file to load it. You can see that we have chosen the Dusk Sky backdrop, and if we hover our cursor over the Image button, we get a preview of what the backdrop looks like. Click Accept, and the backdrop image will load. If we switch to our perspective view, we can see the backdrop image. It gives us a cloudy sunset rather than the blue background we had before. Now we'll switch back to our Camera 1 view, and you can see the backdrop image poking through, up there in the corner. All we need to do now is set our render settings and render our scene. Rendering is done in the Render Activity. Click on the Render Activity tab to switch activities. You can see we have the Render Settings pane on the left-hand side. We also want to make sure that we're viewing through Camera 1. We'll set our view using the View Selection menu. Now, all we need to do is load a Render Settings preset. This tutorial comes with 3 Render Settings presets that can be loaded through the Content Library pane. The Content Library pane is another location for you to load your content. You can learn more about it in the DAZ Studio User Guide. For now, we'll look under DAZ Studio Formats, My DAZ 3D Library, DAZ Studio Tutorials, Genesis 2 Barefoot Dancer. You can see icons for everything that is part of this tutorial. Here are the 3 render settings presets I mentioned. There are settings for high, medium, and low. These presets will determine the speed and quality of your render. Higher settings means a higher image quality, but a longer render time. For now, let's load the low preset. You can experiment with the other 2 later. Double-click the icon to load the preset. You will see the aspect frame appear in the viewport. This tells us the exact area of the viewport that will be rendered. Anything inside of this frame will be included in the render. Now that we've loaded our render settings preset, it's time to render this scene. To start the render, click the green render button in the render settings pane. You'll see a new window pop open and the render will begin. Rendering can take a long time. Don't be surprised if the render takes upwards of 5 minutes or more on your machine. I'll just skip ahead to the end of the render so you don't have to wait. Now you can see the image has finished rendering. The image is here in the render window. All that's left to do is save the image. I'll name this one Barefoot Dancer. We also need to select an image file format. DAZ Studio gives you several options. I usually prefer the PNG file format as it provides a lossless compression and an alpha channel. We will be saving to the render library, so all we need to do is click Save, and the image will be saved to the render library. If you go to the render library pane, you can see that the Barefoot Dancer image is right there. Double-click the icon, and either Windows Photo Viewer or Mac Preview will open the photo. If you have access to Adobe Photoshop or another 2D image editing software, you can use that to edit your image. That's all there is for this scene. It's pretty easy to create great art with DAZ Studio. With DAZ content, you can create a completely new scene or modify and change the Barefoot Dancer scene. The only limit is your imagination. Thanks for watching this tutorial. You can learn more by checking out the DAZ Studio User Guide or by visiting docs.daz3d.com.